Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to a special edition of Movie Goodness here on the KB Radio Network. And this is the review of Universal Pictures horror comedy film Renfield, which stars Nicholas Hoult, Aquafina, and the great Nicolas Cage as Dracula. I'm a little late to the party with Renfield. I didn't get a chance to check it out when it first dropped in theaters on April the 14th. But but I did get around to seeing it because this is one of my highly anticipated films of the year, and I wanted to see it just for the sole purpose of watching Nicolas Cage chew up scenery, no pun intended, as Dracula. And I must say, I was not disappointed. This was a very interesting take on the lore of Dracula, as opposed from other versions of Dracula we've watched in the past, whether it's Bram Stoker's Dracula or Van Helsing or things of that nature that we grew up loving. As horror fans, if you're a horror fan, especially if you're a Dracula movie lover. I love all vampire movies. I'm huge on that. Actually, all Universal monsters, whether it's Dracula or Frankenstein's monster, the Mummy, whatever it may be. I'm a huge fan of those properties. And Dracula is a very interesting cat, to put it plainly. The father of all vampires, I guess you could say. And this go around in Renfield, we get it from the perspective of Renfield. Uh, no kidding, right? That's the name of the movie. But it was kind of new and fresh from that aspect. We're getting it from Renfield. If you read the novel, Bram Stoker's novel from 1897, um, you know that Renfield is a huge character in that novel. And if you've seen, past Dracula films, you know of Renfield, what that character entails. He's basically a familiar. And a familiar um is a loyal servant or a slave to Dracula or their vampire masters. For instance, Blade, the movie Wesley Snipes, we know what familiars were in those films. And this is the same thing. So they play that up in this film where Renfield is Dracula's familiar, his servant who finds him food. Is what is described in the movie, but we know that Dracula food is humans, and that's who he feeds on. So Renfield is faced with this challenge of serving Dracula, but being a good guy. Being a good guy who works for the most evil guy to ever walk the earth. And that was an interesting aspect of it. And so this film opens up with Renfield. He's at this support group for, I guess you could say, people who goes through toxic relationships. And he's one of these people who goes through this toxic. He has a toxic relationship with his boss, who is Dracula, but he doesn't tell the group that, of course. And he's really there because throughout decades of serving Dracula, he's been alone. He hasn't found anyone who has experienced what he has experienced, and to go to this group just randomly, really searching for food for Dracula, he stumbles upon this group and he realizes that he's not alone. He's not the only one going through this. Not to the degree that he's going through it with a blood sucking vampire, but these people are going through toxic relationships. So he has an epiphany. He hears these people's stories and he figured, okay, I can help them and serve my master at the same time by getting these toxic people that the people from his group are dealing with and serving them to his master. And it was like Robin Hood, in a sense. He's yeah, he's brutally killing people, but these are people who quote unquote deserve it. And so he tries to go that route. While doing that, he gets involved with the mob on one of his grocery runs, I guess you can say, for Dracula. And insanity ensues from there. And we have the involvement of Aquafina, who plays a New Orleans police officer, who is after this mob because the mob is the one who murdered her father. So she has a vendetta towards the mob. And so this is how these characters come into play. This film is directed by Chris McKay, who previously directed the Lego Batman movie. And I know that's like the most random of randoms, you know, when you think of a film career. But he also directed the Tomorrow War, which was a film that came out last year or the year before. I forgot when, but it starred Chris Pratt. I think it was on Prime Video, probably still on Prime Video. But uh, I, I enjoyed that movie. It was pretty good. At one time, he was tapped to direct a live action Nightwing movie for DC, but that fell apart. That was years ago. But I really enjoyed Lego Batman movie. I thought that was just excellent. As a Batman fan, I loved it. It was it was the greatest thing of all time in my humble opinion. And then like I said, Tomorrow World was decent. It wasn't the greatest thing on earth, but it was serviceable, I would say. It was watchable, and I must say this was good. This was decent as well. Like it's not gonna set the world on fire, but I enjoyed it. I had a good time watching this film. Let's start with the actors here. The star of this film, Nicholas Hope, I've been a fan of since About a Boy, a film that came out, I don't know what, 12, 13 years ago. I forgot how long it was, but he was a boy in that movie, and I've enjoyed him ever since then in the X-Men films when he played Beast and other projects. At one time, he was in the running to play Batman, Bruce Wayne, on two separate occasions. Just recently for Matt Reeves, where that role came down to Robert Pattinson and Nicholas Hope, and it eventually went to Robert Pattinson. I was champion for Nicholas Hope. I that's how much of a fan I am of his. I think he would kill it as Bruce Wayne. He just has that. He has that look. He has that swag. I think he can do it. Now, um, maybe he can be in the new DC. They're going a different route than Matt Reeves. Matt Reeves Batman is not going to be a part of James Gunn DC. And so maybe they can go back and revisit Nicholas Hoult. I think he is that good. And in this film, oh, you see it. And that's why I bring that up. You see it here with the action, with the soft moments, with the moments of vulnerability. He plays it perfectly. Uh Aquafina. Aquafina, who in the past, not in every film, but in a couple of films I've seen her in, Aquafina can be a little aggravating to me. She can be a little annoying in some films. I'm like, oh man, why is she in this movie? Like sometimes she just doesn't fit in certain projects, but she ends up getting in these projects. Not that I'm hating on her or nothing, but because sometimes she is funny. Sometimes I can enjoy her. I enjoyed her in Shang-Chi, The Legend of the Ten Rings. But she annoyed me in Jumanji. In films like that, I don't know what it is. But this is my favorite performance from Aquafina, crazy enough. You know, I really enjoyed her character because she was the only character in this film that was quote unquote normal, you know, as opposed to all the other actors who was here. You have Nicholas Holt. He's, you know, a fantastical character. Nicolas Cage as Dracula, he was fantastical. Ben Schwartz was fantastical, you know, but she was more of the most, or should I say, she was the most grounded character in the film. She was funny when she needed to be funny. She was serious when she needed to be serious, and I was all in. I was totally invested in her character. Speaking of Ben Schwartz, didn't even know he was in this movie. Completely silly in a good way. He was the he was just a clown, and I bust out laughing every time he was on screen. Every scene he was in, he was hilarious. And I can't go any further without talking about Nicolas Cage. This is the first uh studio project Nicolas Cage has been in. I want to say since Ghost Rider. Everything else he's done has been, you know, the video on demand movies, you know, these little low budget movies. But this is the first time he's done a studio film in about 15 years. And I didn't realize that until I saw this movie. And all I can ask myself is why? Because this dude, the little screen time that he has, he's not in this movie a ton. That I wish it was, but you also have to remember the movie is called Renfield. This is not Dracula. So this isn't his movie. But the scenes that Nicolas Cage is in this film, he is full on Nicolas Cage. And this was one of the most enjoyable, entertaining, fun Nicolas Cage performances I have ever seen. Well, not ever, but I have seen in years. Uh he took Dracula to heights that I did not expect. You know, this is a comedy. It's more comedy than horror. You know, there's really no horror. It's really just a comedy. But when he went full Dracula, it was horror. He was menacing. He was funny. Oh my God, he was funny. In scenes when him and Nicholas Holt were going back and forth, especially when he popped up in his apartment in one scene, hilarious. I loved Nicolas Cage in this movie. Loved him. The makeup they done on him throughout the film was spot on. He was truly Dracula. This is one of the best Draculas I've seen on film, and I'm not talking in hyperbole. He really was a true Dracula, and I mean it's Nicolas Cage. I know that I know he can be over the top. Yes, he is in a lot. He's even over the top in a couple of scenes in this film, but his over the top isn't just for silly sakes. You know what I'm saying? In any movie that he's in, is for a reason. Nicolas Cage just brings it in every single movie that he's in, and I don't know what it was about this one. I just felt a different presence from him throughout this film, and it was just a joy watching him as Dracula. It was a fun time to watch my city, New Orleans, play a big role in this film. It was just beautiful to look at all the landscapes. It's good to see New Orleans as I see New Orleans. You know, sometimes I don't know what it is, and it just could be me. But when I watch movies set in New Orleans, it's always dark. It has this just tone that's just kind of just dark and foggy. You know, it just looks depressing at times in certain films. You know, but this film, New Orleans just felt alive in this movie. Ironically, a movie about a dead man walking around killing people, but it just felt alive and I loved it. Uh, yeah, man. Yeah, I do have some flaws. I mean, this isn't a perfect film by no stretch of the imagination. Um, it kind of drags. The movie's about 90 minutes long. It's not a long movie, but in certain areas, it kind of drags. And they probably could have cut another 10 minutes off of it, like in the middle of the film. There's certain characters that were just wasted. You know, they were just there for being their sake. They don't help move the story along at all, but they're there. you know, the final battle at the end was kind of it was just ridiculous. It was way too much talking from Dracula, and I understand what they were doing. And as much as I love Nicolas Cage as Dracula, I don't fault him for this. I fault the screenwriters for this. Way too much dialogue going on, and the way they, I guess you could say, came to a resolution without spoiling the movie. Came to the resolution at the end was kind of like, okay, whatever. It just, it was just silly. It was built up so good. I think the story was really good, but the ending just felt rushed. If that makes any sense. I know I just said that the movie dragged in the middle, but once we got to the end, it was like, okay, here's the end and stop. you know, and at the very end, the final scene of the movie, I'm like, wait, there are people who are alive that should have been dead, and the explanation to why they're alive was just dumb to me. It was dumb to me and very accepting of the situation that took place that I know this is a comedy and I know this is a far fetched concept of a film, but you're asking me to really suspend disbelief a lot here. And it only happened at the very end of the movie. The rest of the film I was good with, but it just got to the end of the movie and it was like, okay, we got to accept this here. We got to accept this. eh, 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 I don't know. It just did not work for me at the end. To put it plainly, to make a long story short, which I made a short story long, I didn't like the end. I didn't like the end of the movie. But overall, if I'm grading it by overall, I enjoyed it. It was still a fun time. This is the first film in a long time that I actually bust out laughing. you know, there have been comedies I watch and I kind of giggle under my breath, chuckle a little bit under my breath. But there were scenes in this movie where I literally burst out laughing, you know, because it was just hilariously funny. And it wasn't gags, they didn't rely on gags. It was actually dialogue that had me dying laughing or a facial expression or it was just well placed jokes that worked. And I appreciate it so much. And after the movie went off, even though I had my problems with the ending, I thought back on past comedies I've watched, and I'm like, wait, I really haven't laughed like that in a while. You know what I'm saying? I was like, oh man, this feels good. This really feels good. It's the little things in life that makes you happy, and to realize that I haven't really laughed in a movie like this in so long. And for this movie to do that, oh, I gotta give it a good grade. So Renfield gets a letter grade of a B minus. I think it is kind of underappreciated, to be honest with you. I know it hasn't done well at the box office. Uh and that's a crime. And I blame myself partially because I did not go see this opening weekend, the first week it came out, and I fault myself. I dropped the ball on that, as well as a lot of people who haven't seen it. So if you haven't seen it, go check this movie out. I don't. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be on. It should be on video on demand soon. Because I'm pretty sure it's coming out of theaters. It's worth it. I'm telling you, it's worth the watch. just for the hilarity. Oh, I forgot to mention this as well. This is a very gory movie. It is a lot of blood in here, and unexpectedly, like I said, it's a comedy, but it is bloody. It's very bloody, but it's almost to the point where it ain't almost. It is comically bloody. You really gonna bust out laughing like at all the blood that's in this movie. I did not expect that much. I did not. But all in all, fun time at the movies, fun time watching this. You will laugh. Uh you will definitely have fun with Nicolas Cage performance in this film. But I like to know, have you seen it or are you waiting for it to drop in streaming or whatever so you could check it out? And if you have checked it out, I would like to know how you felt. You can email the show kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also look me up on Twitter at KB Radio Network. And on other social media platforms, just look up the KB Radio Network. Don't forget, everybody, leave the 5 stars, leave the reviews, and share this show with all your friends and family. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever it is you're currently listening to Movie Goodness on the KB Radio Network. Don't forget that we're on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you all for joining me for this review of Renfield. Hope to talk to you soon. Hope you're enjoying your day, your week, your month, your evening, whenever you are listening to the show. I'm glad you're checking it out. I greatly appreciate it. I love you. And I want you all to love one another. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.